Welcome to the first episode of For the Love of Parks, a podcast celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy's partnership with the City of Pittsburgh to improve our parks. I'm Camilla Rivera-Tinsley, the Education Director here at the Parks Conservancy. I'll be your host as we tell stories that illuminate the work our partnership does. Some of that work is highly visible, like building the Frick Environmental Center, and some you really only notice when it's not done. Trail maintenance, or weeding out invasive species. But behind all of this work is the time and energy of the Conservancy and city staff and thousands of donors and volunteers that make it happen.
I really believe in the commons and kind of playing together and meeting strangers. So the idea of meeting people that you don't know, that you wouldn't cross paths with otherwise, is really important to me. That's been the only place that we can do it this year.
Parks are important for health and quality of life, and never has that been more apparent than over this past year.
If you're feeling really cooped up in your house or you're feeling like you haven't gotten any exercise, just go to a park. It feels good.
During the pandemic, we heard from a lot of Pittsburghers about all the ways they've been using the parks and what the parks have meant to them.
When the gyms closed down, I just thought, this is half my life. We're heading up to the park. I've never seen the park used more than this year. My music's probably the loudest, but everybody's like friends here.
Before the pandemic, my family and I did not used to use the parks as much as we do now. After the pandemic started, we're here with my friends in the morning, and we bring our families here in the evening, and we take classes if they're available.
People are still using the parks in record numbers. From July of 2019 to July of 2021, monthly attendance doubled. Some people are discovering the parks for the first time, or rediscovering them.
We're out enjoying the first time for my grandson's toboggan sliding. He is 3 years old.
Papa.
My first grandchild. Again?
Finding ways to connect with people, like that's what parks are made for. Also connecting with nature, which helps us prioritize the right things in life.
Maybe you've noticed it yourself this past year. The parks are well loved, well used, and well cared for. But it wasn't always this way.
If you would go to what's now the Schenley Park Visitor Center, for example, that building had been boarded up for 10 years.
That's Meg Cheever. When Meg moved to Pittsburgh in 1975, the parks were in their worst shape in the history of the city. They had been benignly neglected and abused for more than a quarter of a century. In the 1980s, she was raising 3 kids and wanted to connect with nature. But the condition of the parks made it hard to explore.
When you tried to go down the stairs into the park, into Panther Hollow Valley, I used to say to my kids it was like the thicket that grew up around Sleeping Beauty's castle. You could hardly find your way through the thorns.
Meg grew up in Boston and used to go to parks all the time with her dad and their dog Trixie.
And my dad died very suddenly when I was 12. He went to bed one night, and when I woke up the next day, he was gone. The first thing I did was take Trixie and go to the park. And so for me, ever since I've been a youth, parks have really been such an important place for me. Places of beauty, places of fun and relaxation, and also places of solace. And I think there are many people who feel that way too. I think they're all over the park.
Skip to 1995. Meg is winding down her time as the publisher of Pittsburgh Magazine. She read a story in the New York Times about the Central Park Conservancy that sparked an idea.
I had not known about parks conservancies at all before reading that story. That night, I was seated next to George Tabor, who was then the head of the Richard King Mellon Foundation, at a dinner. And I said, I read this interesting article about the Central Park Conservancy. Mr. Tabor was a charming man, but he looked a little grumpy. And I said, what are you thinking? And he said, well, we funded a study some years ago about how to bring back Schenley Park, but nothing's ever happened because it had what was considered to be a very alarming price tag of $20 million to restore all of Schenley Park. So it just was an idea that percolated in the back of my mind.
Over the next year or so, Meg rounded up several other Pittsburghers who also felt passionately about the parks.
And we were definitely a grassroots group. We had no staff, we had no resources, but we had our own personal energy.
I was immediately enthusiastic about this idea. It didn't take anything at all to kindle my enthusiasm.
This is Marley Myers. Marley is a founding partner of Morgan Lewis's Pittsburgh office and a leading business lawyer. She offered to do the legal work of incorporating the Conservancy for free. She was the Conservancy's first board chair.
I think my title later evolved to founding board chair so that it's a title I can keep forever.
The reason that she was definitely willing to come and help and to chair the board was because as a child, Frick Park was so important to her. She grew up in Squirrel Hill and really said that it was a magical place to her.
I come from a family that was poor, no ability to take vacations or to access any woods or other green spaces, and I have the fondest memories of the parks because I spent a ton of time, especially at Frick Park.
So Marley and Meg and a small band of other park lovers began their journey with passion, but not much else.
It was slow going in the beginning because we had only ourselves as the mandate to do this.
We kind of jumped into it, not really knowing how hard it was going to be. We had no idea how hard it was going to be.
We suddenly were faced with doing a lot of things at once, like 4 big things. One was developing a constituency within Pittsburgh of people who actually cared a lot about the parks. And another was developing a relationship with the city, who owned the parks. Another was raising money, and that was through developing relationships with individuals and corporations and foundations who could help support what we were trying to do. And another one was obtaining expert knowledge.
They incorporated on December 17, 1996, and called themselves the Schenley Conservancy. The model was the Central Park Conservancy.
We took a lot of great ideas from the Central Park Conservancy.
And they decided to focus only on Schenley Park, to try to bring it back.
Schenley was my neighborhood park. We were just trying to fix up a park so that our kids could play there. That's how we started.